وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I hope everybody's good. We are again today without a speaker, so I'll try my best to project my voice. My wife tells me I'm pretty loud, so hopefully it should be fine. But if it's not loud enough, just let me know. Alhamdulillah. So we're going to be focusing today entirely on Ramadan. Ramadan is 3 to 4 days away, inshallah. So the entire class will be focused on fasting and how to best prepare for fasting in the month of Ramadan, bi'idhnillah, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. So what we talked about last time, excuse me, what we spoke about last time was the importance of looking at the month of Ramadan as a month of mercy, as a month of forgiveness, as a month for us to work on ourselves. Those were kind of the three main components to the month of Ramadan. While fasting is obviously a core part of us getting there and of us achieving Allah's forgiveness and of us achieving Allah's mercy and of us being able to change ourselves, fasting is not the only component of Ramadan. It is the central component, but there's a lot more to the month of Ramadan. If somebody's not able to fast, someone is, pregnant or on their cycle or breastfeeding and isn't able to fast, or someone has a health condition and they're not able to fast, it doesn't mean they can't take advantage of the month of Ramadan. There's a lot of extra benefits to that month that are not available in other months. And it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives special times special weight, right? So we know that the night time and the time right before Fajr is very, very special. We know that the time right after Asr on Fridays is very, very special. It's a time where dua is accepted. And like that, there are months that are special, amongst which the month of Ramadan is the most special month. It's a very, very important month. And I know that we have no chairs. So if anybody wants, if anybody wants to sit on a chair, you're welcome to get them from that room and bring the chairs in. And there's a few over here, sisters, especially if you'd like to use these, please, you're more than welcome to. And as you guys can see, there's new carpets in the masjid and there's some work going on to prepare the masjid for the month of Ramadan. Just like where the masjid is being cleaned out and being prepared, the Muslim needs to prepare for the month of Ramadan. We don't want to enter the month entirely unprepared and with no planning or intentions or anything set in advance. And so the first thing we want to do for this month is we want to set intentions. The Prophet ﷺ told us that actions are by their intention. And so you want to set lofty, big, significant intentions for the month of Ramadan. So of course we intend to fast. Yes, that's important, right? And most of the schools of fiqh, you should intend to fast the beginning of the month for the entire month, and then try to renew that intention every day. But there should be a lot more than just intending to fast. You don't want the month to go by without every day having some purposeful intent to it. And 30 days can go by super, super quickly. So what are some types of intentions that we can make? Among the types of intentions is, what is the intent for fasting? We intend to fast so that we can achieve a special nearness to Allah. That would be one intention that we want to make. And these are intentions, the month is a few days away. We should make these intentions kind of collectively as we're discussing this right now. We intend to fast so that we can change ourselves and so that we can work on attaining good qualities. We intend to fast so that we can follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and will first of all follow the command of Allah in this month, and then follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to just limit food intake, because the Prophet ﷺ did not eat much. And then make any other intentions you have for fasting, right? The next big set of intentions should be for habits that you and I want to work on. And we'll talk about specifically types of things that we should do. But everybody should try to have at least one bad habit that they want to work on getting rid of in this month, and one good habit that they want to cultivate. Usually, the science of habit development says you need roughly 30 days, some say 40, to develop a habit or to get rid of a bad habit. Ramadan is the perfect time where we have exactly a month to work on ourselves. And the goal is, and we should intend that we attain virtuous habits that we can continue outside of the month of Ramadan. We don't want the month of Ramadan to just be something we do, it's over, and then we go back to the same things that we used to do. This is a month in which people's entire lives change. That there are people who would be living lives of selling drugs, of partying, of doing various types of crimes, and just not being generally fairly, just caught up, right? It's very, very common actually these days amongst Muslims and non-Muslims in Western society. And the month of Ramadan comes, and there are people, I know quite a few people like this. The month of Ramadan has come, and they gave they gave all of those things up, and they said, I'm just gonna try this whole fasting thing out, right? I'm gonna try to do this properly. And they'll fast, and they'll start to pray a little bit, and their entire life will change after that. And you'll see that after the month of Ramadan, it's completely different, the type of life that they want to live, because what happens is when you fast and when you pray and when you recite Quran, light enters the heart. Nur is entering the heart. There's all this nur. It's a significant injection of nur in your heart. And when so much nur is present, you can't have darkness. You just need a little bit of light and darkness goes away, right? If this entire masjid was dark, one bulb was working, the masjid would be lit up. It's not the same, though, as every single light being on, and it's not the same as the power of the light of the sun, right? But there are people whose hearts are so luminous, like the Prophet ﷺ, that the hearts are more illuminating than the sun, but we don't see the reality. So you want to see the month of Ramadan as a way to increase your nur, as a way to increase your light, and you increase that light by fasting. It's one of the ways to increase light. The more light you have, the more calm and tranquil you'll feel, the less stressed out you'll be, and inshallah, that will be a vehicle for us to get closer to Allah. When your reserves are depleted in other months, you will tap into the reserves that were built up in the month of Ramadan, right? That you have this light. You can be okay, now I need to kind of go back and fall back on that. But if the month of Ramadan is not a month in which consistent habits are worked on, and if prayers are prioritized, fasting is prioritized, just working on ourselves is prioritized, it's very difficult to have that light to carry on throughout the rest of the months. So that's another type of intention that we can make in this month. And then we should all make the intention that we intend everything the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba intended in this month, for fasting and for qiyam and for tarawih and for tahajjud and for working on themselves and so on, right? And we can intend to get closer to the Quran. So like the 4 or 5 buckets of intentions, that we should just write these out and make them as the month comes in, is there should be intentions relation generally, kind of getting closer to Allah and specific things we want to do. Intentions related to fasting, intentions related to extra prayers, example tarawih, intentions related to Quran and increasing our connection to the Quran, and then intentions related to habitual changes that we want to make. If someone has those 4 or 5 buckets and they intend, as Imam Junaid, one of the great imams of the path, he said that when somebody intends, Allah opens 70 doors of tawfiq, meaning divine assistance, to fulfill that intention. You just have to make the intention. And you may see it fulfilled immediately. You may not see it for another year or 2. But the intention is super powerful. The Prophet ﷺ told us that the intention of the believer is greater than his or her action. That's how great the intention is. Because you might intend, you really want to help. Let's say you see people that are struggling and that are without a home and that need food and so on. You really intend, I want to help these people. I really, really want. If I could, I would do so much. But you're just busy, don't have the resources, don't have the structure, may feel unsure about ways to help them. Just the intention is enough to already have gotten you the reward. Allah's already written one reward for the intention. When you complete it, you get multiple times of the reward, right? Versus if you make a bad intention, you get no sin. We get no sin until we do the sin, and then we get one sin written for us, right? So the intention of the believer is super, super, super important. The greats, they attain great stations first by just intending a lot of things. Intend to solve this problem, intend to work on this, intend to help as many people as possible. And then with that, if they're sincere, inshallah, we're sincere in that, Allah gives us the ability to follow through with our intention. He gives us the ability to actually act on the intention. Alhamdulillah. So that's the first thing with regards to the month of Ramadan, is we start the month by intending and being aware of the secrets that are available in this month. The second thing is that we want to come up with, we'll focus the first part of this discussion kind of on practical things we can do, and then second part on fiqh and the rules, inshallah. So we want to come up with a specific goals for ourselves, right? And a specific schedule to attain those goals. It will depend on how far along someone is in their own spiritual journey / how busy they are for what those goals are, right? But we definitely want to set goals. So you start with intentions and then you set specific goals. What's an example of a goal that somebody might set? Maybe someone can share kind of an example of a goal that you already set, you've set in the past, or you want to set. Trying to wake up at the Tahajjud. Excellent goal, right? So that would be like an intention that's made, and now it's a goal that's set, right? Trying to wake up at the Tahajjud. And then we'll put specific, you want to ideally put a little bit of structure around that goal of like, okay, what will you do to try, right? But are there other goals that people might have in the month? Okay, so finish the recitation of the Quran in the month of Ramadan. Yep, that's a very, very common goal. It's a very blessed goal to do, right? Ramadan is 30 days. There's 30 sections of the Quran. If you recite a little more than one a day, you should be able to finish. And then people will multiply that up to how many ever they're able to do. Any other goals? Yeah.
Memorize a couple of ayah every day.
Memorize a couple of ayah. Love it. That's beautiful, right? Memorizing is so important. And in this month, remember, this is the month in which the Prophet ﷺ the Quran was first revealed to him, and it was imprinted on his heart, right? And so imagine now you use this month as a month to follow that sunnah, or to follow that example, you could say, and get the Quran imprinted on your heart by trying to memorize a portion. Yes? Try to make at least half of Taraweeh, if not all of it. Excellent. Yep. And you can always split it up such that you do on weekdays with work and things are busy, you try to do half, and then on weekends, things are a little bit easier, you try to do the full amount, right? Excellent. Any other goals?
Maybe something like if you sometimes fall into backbiting or anything, just making sure you're maybe not talking about negatively about people.
Yep. Excellent. Yep. And so really, really controlling backbiting and making sure to control the tongue and to not fall into negativity and gossip. All excellent goals. So this would be, like you set the intention to get closer to Allah, and you set specific goals, right? And Siddiq, go ahead.
Yeah. Some years ago, Sheikh Mohammed Mendez told us that he said that you should make every day like you're in Ramadan, and you should make every night like you're doing Laylatul Qadr. And what he was trying to really indicate is not some concept that's far off, but in other words, make what you do in Ramadan and the way you approach Ramadan, make it cultural. Like that's how I do my ibadah, so that basically Allah will, elevate you, inshallah.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. The goal of Ramadan is to transform such that we continue, ideally all of it, but if not all of it, right? It's hard to pray 20 rakat every night. Continue a portion of it outside of the month of Ramadan, right? And we get consistent on that. That's really, really, if you look at the schedule of the Prophet ﷺ, it didn't really change that much in Ramadan. Outside of the month of Ramadan, he would wake up for multiple hours at night, right? Would pray Salat al-Isha, would sleep for a portion of the night, would wake up well before multiple hours of the night before Fajr, and pray a very, very long night prayer, right? And then he would fast quite often. And even when he wasn't fasting, he wouldn't eat that much. Very, very light. Most of the prophets ate one meal the whole day, as mentioned by Imam Ghazali. Like food was not like a big thing for them, right? And it was by choice. It's not like they weren't hungry. And it's not like the food wasn't always available. The food was available and they would be hungry, but it was a sign of no, I want to limit this so I can get more in the next life, right? So that would be the higher levels. But you see that for the Muslim, the month of Ramadan, it supercharges us so that we can continue more outside of the month. So the way we want to set aside the goals is very similar kind of structure to the intentions. Ideally coming up with of course, a fasting goal, right? That ideally all 30 days. That should be, the standard. But then a goal for prayer, extra prayer, a goal for Quran, a goal for knowledge, and a goal for what we want to work on for ourselves. It's not valuable to do a bunch of extra ibadah and to be just a bad person. There's very little value for that in our deen, right? The ibadah is supposed to get you somewhere. It's supposed to transform you, right? Allah says in the Quran that prayer should keep you away from fahsha and from munkar, from fahsha and from lewdness and from evil actions. That's the goal of prayer. If someone is praying all the time, which is great, but if they're like completely have terrible characters, basically treating people wrongly outside of the prayer, there's a big problem there. Something's wrong, right? The medicine is not working. All of these actions that we do, it's a medicine to purify the heart. The end goal is to attain this pure heart. Ramadan is a month that really expedites that process, right? So now Allah says, okay, here's a bunch of shortcuts. In addition to the act in and of itself being worth 10 times, 70 times, 700 times in the month of Ramadan, depending on the type of action. And in addition to all these extra doors of mercy being open, in addition to access to nights like Laylatul Qadr, where dua is accepted, inshallah, and where the night is worth more than 83 years of ibadah and worship, all of these other things. That there's moments in the month of Ramadan which will just really quickly, they're called sweet breezes from Allah, what's called nafahat. These sweet breezes come in and they push you towards Allah, or for some they pull. Allah wants to pull them close. And those moments are accessible in Ramadan, unlike in other months. They're very accessible in Ramadan, especially in the night. The night has all these moments. So don't look at night worship in the month of Ramadan only as I got to do this and I just got to kind of, tough it out. And it's like this, very, there's no deep spirituality to it. Look at everything with some spiritual lens. Do it to the degree that you have himma, that we have aspiration and we have the physical ability, and push ourselves a bit, but realize the barakah and that you are getting. Just by standing in the rows, listening to the Imam recite Quran, many times people feel like they have to have the English following along and on the phone and those are all generally things that should be avoided. That's not from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But one of the main reasons, is because you don't need any of that in order to benefit from the Quran. Your heart is understanding the language in the Quran in a way the intellect might understand many years later. So it could have been an imprint that went in the month of Ramadan because of something the Imam was reciting that really started to transform you at a deep level, and you might not see the fruit of that for 2 years. That's how breezes and access to these divine secrets work, right? Many of our teachers have said there might be a gathering that's held, that in that gathering people benefit in a way that they might not see for 10 or 20 years, but that gathering will be so beneficial to them in driving things forward for them 10 or 20 years later. It's hard to explain because it's all happening in the unseen, right? In the unseen, your soul, your spirit, you're yearning for things in the unseen. And so Allah is operating in the primarily, dominantly, right? Allah operates in the unseen, right? You don't see Allah, you don't see the actions of Allah very, very visibly until people reach a state, as we mentioned in the early discussions, where they have a realized certainty, and then they're able to very crisply see this, every single thing is from Allah, right? And it becomes much, much more manifest. So those would be the buckets of goals that would be recommended. Starting with the night prayer. So we'll start with, or we would discuss fasting. Moving on to the prayer. So Taraweeh is a emphasized sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning that for men, regularly leaving Taraweeh without excuse in congregation is considered sinful, right? You cannot, in the Hanafi school, you cannot just continually leave it for no obvious reason. However, it's not mandatory to do the congregation in the masjid. You can also pray separately. So Taraweeh is really, really important in the month of Ramadan, right? It's important for men and it's important for women, and it's important to do at least Isha in congregation, right? And then try to do 20 rak'ah in congregation or outside of congregation. So that would be like a goal to try to set, right? To say, okay, I really want to try to do as much of Salatul Taraweeh as possible. Do not look at Taraweeh as this kind of like optional thing. Oh, I'll do it in the last 10 nights, or I just want to hang out longer at this iftar. There'll be plenty of time to kick it. I can guarantee you. There's a lot of time to hang out. There's very little time to achieve these types of blessings, right? So we really want to try to maximize. And if it can't be done every day of the week, to try to prioritize certain days of the week where we do it. There is a question that I think we discussed this last time on make-up prayers versus Taraweeh. And that's an important question to consider. If someone has a significant amount of make-up prayers, in the Shafi, Maliki school at least, its make-up prayers are prioritized over Salat al-Taraweeh. And in the Shafi school, someone, if they wanted to, could intend Fajr make-up while the Imam is playing Taraweeh, but that's not something that's done in other schools. So, but just keep in mind that you want to use Ramadan ideally first and foremost to make up prayers. That's my advice at least. And then once someone has made up the majority of their prayers, do Taraweeh, or split it up, right? So do 8 here and then go home and make up whatever prayers. But use the time at night, main message, use the time at night to pray extra and set a goal and try to stick to that goal and push when that goal becomes difficult. It's like anybody who's worked out before, it's very difficult to make gains. And if you don't push, you won't make any gains. It's just like, walk down the treadmill. If someone walks on the treadmill for 10 minutes and they tell somebody, everybody's going to laugh at them. Like, you didn't really go to the gym. I mean, or someone's like, oh, I just kind of did 5 machines and did a bunch of random pull, push movements, right? There has to be something significant where you're like, no. I pushed myself. I increased the weight by this much. I did this many more reps. and I am very, very sore because today because of what I did yesterday. That happens sometimes. You have to spiritually push yourself. You think of Ramadan as, okay, maybe all 30 days it's hard to do in a lot, right? But do more at the beginning and then increase that a little bit more and then max out kind of at the end in the last 10 nights. But do keep in mind that no pain, no gain, right? Like it does take spiritual effort. It's called the greater jihad for a reason. It comes in a narration that the Sahaba came back from fighting a war, and it was said, welcome back to the greater jihad. You are in the greater struggle now, the struggle against your nafs. Because the nafs is lazy, it wants to eat, it wants to hang out. Iftar happens, and then it's dinner, and then you're hanging out, and you're like, now it's time to go to the masjid. Do I really have to go? I'll do it at home. And then next thing you know, like an hour goes by, no prayers happen. You're like, oh, now I have to go to sleep and work, and you just pray Isha and go to sleep, right? The nafs, that's lazy. The nafs doesn't go anywhere in Ramadan. It's still here. Shaitan is gone. The nafs is still here, right? So it will convince us to try to be lazy and to try to not do more. We have to fight against that and that really push against the nafs. The second thing is Quran goals. This will vary depending on how fluent someone is at reciting and how basically how much someone is able to recite. At the higher end, there are people who there are people like this in the Ummah today. They do a khatam a day in Ramadan. They're doing full 30 a day, and Allah puts a lot of barakah in their time such that they're able to recite a lot of Quran. One of the teachers that I know that was, even though they do a lot of things in Ramadan, they did 56 khatams in the month of Ramadan in addition to teaching, in addition to doing all these other things. How that happens, Allah knows the type of capacity He gives them. Usually these people are huffaz. Imam Shafi would do, I believe, 60 khatams in the month of Ramadan regularly, right? So he would pause most of his studying of fiqh and he would entirely focus on the Quran. What it's showing is Quran is essential, right? For us, if we can make it to like 1, it's great. If we can do 2, even better, right? The advice I would give is try to aspire to do more and you fall back and do less. If you aspire to do 1 and you 2 or 3 days are missed, it's very easy to fall out and be like, oh, I could only do half. So aspire to say, you know what, I'm going to try to do 2, right? I'm going to try to recite a lot in the beginning so that when the middle days come and the nafs comes in and we get a little bit lazier, it becomes easier to say, okay, I have some in my reserve that I can lean on, and at least I'll get to 1 khatam, right? So I know people like they'll be on a path in the beginning to doing 2 or 3 juz a day, and then they're like, okay, am I gonna get a little bit tired? And then they'll go back to 1 or 2, but they'll still complete those 1 or 2 khatams. And in the last 10, people get this extra himma where it becomes easier to do more Quran, right? Maybe especially at nighttime, people are usually staying awake to worship more. So it becomes easier. But at least try to do 1 khatam if you are fluent in reciting Arabic, right? If that's easy to do. If it's not easy to do, pick, okay, I'm going to try to get through 1 surah. I'm going to try to get through Surah Baqarah, let's say, right? Which is about 2.5 juz of the Quran. But try to have a goal. And everybody knows what that goal is based on the capacity you have. If last Ramadan we did 1, goal should not be 1, right? Then the growth isn't there. That's minimum. Then you got to get to at least 1.5. If not 2. If the last Ramadan it was 2, increase, right? There should always be a level of increase. Somebody who's in a job and they stay at the same level for multiple years, they'll probably at some point, at least someone in their family will be like, what are you doing? Why aren't you growing? Why aren't you getting promoted? Da, 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 da. And then usually most time we'll ask ourselves those questions. Like in dunya, we're very, very, focused on increasing and working hard. See this as applying that same mentality, ideally more, spiritually. So setting aside a goal for the Quran is very, very important. Then it's about practically breaking that down. I would highly advise having a schedule for the Quran in the month of Ramadan. Do not just set a goal of a 1 khatam and have no idea how you'll achieve the goal. Same thing. Don't set a goal of more night prayers, have no idea how to achieve the goal, right? So like Taraweeh, you can set a goal and you'll come to the masjid and you'll do it. And if someone needs like a little motivation, you'll have your motivation. Oh, I'll give myself a chocolate after the 8 rakat and motivate myself, whatever motivation that it would be. Right, but the Quran goal, it has to usually done on our own time. No one's going to have a very infrequently are there like group recitations going on. So for that, the goal should be, okay, like I know people who will do Fajr after Fajr, they'll sit and it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to recite one juz, and they'll just do a whole juz after Fajr. Others will break it up to do a juz after Fajr and or part of a juz after Fajr, part of a juz after Dhuhr, part of a juz after Asr or some other time of the day. For those who are like commuting and walking or barding to work, they'll say, I'm going to do my entire Quran on my commute, right? As long as obviously they're not, driving, that's not advised. But you'll break it up, but have some practical specifics of I will do this much at this time, and make sure to start off strong in it. If you fall off a day or a few days later, it happens, but make sure to start off strong with those goals. And don't set your Quran goals at nighttime. It's very difficult on weekdays at night Taraweeh would be emphasized over reciting Quran. So if your Quran goal is at nighttime, and you're debating between do I come to Taraweeh or do I recite Quran, Taraweeh is an emphasized sunnah that would take precedence over reciting Quran at nighttime, right? So you would say, no, I got to come to Taraweeh. And then after that, it's like, how much time is there to do your own thing, right? So it should be done during the daytime, and then maybe a little bit extra on the weekends. But again, trying to have some level of, if it's a juz a day, 15 minutes after Fajr, 5 minutes before Dhuhr, 10 minutes after. If you break it apart like that, it becomes pretty easy to do, inshallah, because you just broke it up. It's like 5 minutes of scrolling on Instagram changes into 5 minutes of scrolling the Quran pages. Like you can actually just have the Quran app on your phone. You just delete the social media apps, and in the same place the social media app is, you put the Quran app. You'll automatically go there to press the button and try to open it, and it'll be gone, and you'll open the Quran, and then if you try to close it, you'll feel bad. You'll be like, now I'm stuck. And then you'll recite it, and it'll be amazing. So you get down to this level of we all know ourselves. We know our tendencies, and we know what's going to happen, right? Like I'll have times where like I'll finish praying, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I just got to check one thing on my phone, and then I'll make the dua. And next thing you know, it's 15 minutes, and I just completely forgot to do all that, because at the time I just let the little thought in my head say, oh, let's check one thing. I could have waited 2 minutes, finished the sunnah du'as, and we know ourselves. So now it's like we have to say, no. I'm not going to check it until I finished A, B, and C, right, of my routine. For those of us who are prone, and I'm getting really specific here, for a reason, for those of us who are prone to easily falling into scrolling and on their phones and whatnot, the Quran recitation, ideally do it in a mushaf or something, right? Then the phone is trying to recite Quran on the phone. You get, after 1 or 2 pages, someone loses concentration, and then they're like, oh, let me just read CNN, and then let me just go on this, and the next thing you know, 20 minutes has gone by, the whole juz could have been completed, and now we have to get back to work or whatever it is, and the Quran goal wasn't met. So we know ourselves, say, okay, you know what, I'm going to put the phone away and have my Quran on, a mushaf or something else that you kind of carry around or whatever else it is. So that would be the specifics. Yes, question.
Would you say it's better to prioritize recitation over tafsir or reading translations? Like, is that the number one priority when it comes to Ramadan?
Great question. The question was, would we prioritize recitation over tafsir or just learning the commentary or reading the Quran in your language? Generally speaking, if you can do a mix of both, it's preferred. So if you are able to section out time to say, I'm going to have this time to recite, right? And I'm going to have this time to either listen to a podcast tafsir or a read tafsir or read the Quran in English. That would be ideal, right? So say, okay, I'm going to try to get one khatam done here, and then whatever portion I can get done here. If it's not possible to split out the time, it would really be up to you on what you feel like you need more. I wouldn't leave the recitation in Ramadan though. Like I've generally heard from our teachers to prioritize recitation as much as possible, but I've also heard that obviously the importance of understanding. You understand one concept and it can change the way you live your life, and then that carries a lot of reward. The thing to note about recitation, sometimes we think recitation is like, oh yeah, we're just getting like, 5 points for this word and 10 points for this. And we're just like, that's all we see it as. That's not really what it is. What you want to see recitation as is that this is Allah speaking to you, and you're reciting like if you really want to get like deep about it, think about it like a love letter God wrote you, right? To you specifically, to everybody, it's a letter. God wrote you. And you're reciting that to try to grasp what it means. Your heart already knows the meaning deep down inside. There's a part in you that already knows the meaning because it was present with Allah on the day when he asked, am I not your Lord? It already knows the meaning. The recitation of the Quran is a language that unlocks those meanings for you, right? That's not unlocked when you do other things and don't recite. You have to read it in the language and it was revealed in order to unlock that, which is Arabic. You couple that with the tafsir and the commentary and the reading in English, let's say, and it now creates this really nice blend where the spiritual meanings have already been unlocked, and now intellectually you're starting to understand what to do, right? But keep in mind the recitation there's a lot going on that you and I don't even realize. And so there will be people who have recited a lot. They have no idea what things actually say or mean intellectually, but they somehow, the concepts are just there for them, right? And it was because most of the time the barakah of that recitation. So ideally you want to couple the two. Yeah, I would try to have 20, 30 minutes a day focused on recitation, 15, 20 minutes a day focused on reading. Getting through a whole English khatam can be difficult. So just pick, what I would go deep on a surah. So, go deep on a tafsir of a surah for one part, and then on Surah Baqarah, ideally a little bit of longer surah, right? Might take a little time to get through, and then go with the recitation. But Allahu Alam, everyone will kind of choose their own. None of these things are, fard, right? So it's kind of up to us on what we want to do most. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions on the Quran part? Okay. And then what we did not touch on was memorization, which was mentioned earlier, that's also, of course, very, very virtuous to do. And again, I would have a goal of, I want to memorize this surah, right? And try to make it instead of something that's too large of an amount and too small of amount, pick something in the middle and then work towards it and say, okay, let's say Surah Kaf. Surah Kaf is 110 ayahs, I believe, right? Somebody could realistically do 4 ayahs a day, roughly, right? And they could actually get through all of Surah Kaf in the month of Ramadan. 4 ayahs a day is doable, right? It might take a little bit of time in the later days because you're reviewing the past ayahs, but it's manageable. So you pick something that's manageable. If we don't know some of the longer surahs, like if we're always reciting Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, and Lillah fi Quraysh, like just the short ones, that's all good, but we want to expand, right? Ramadan is a good time to learn a few of the longer surahs. Sabbih ismi rabbikal a'la, wash-shamsi wad-duha, Surah Ghashiyah, and so on, so we can at least expand the recitation in our prayers, right? So try to prioritize those in 30th juz, and try to do so, gradually throughout the month of Ramadan. So then so that's recitation. The third thing would be Salatul Tahajjud, which is distinct from Salatul Taraweeh. That's the dominant opinion, is it's not the same. Contrary to some people think that the two are the same. Salatul Tahajjud, Salatul Taraweeh are different. Taraweeh is the prayer that is prayed at nighttime post Salatul Isha. Salatul Tahajjud in Ramadan will be prayed well before Salatul Fajr in the last 1/3 of the night. Try to at least get 2 rak'ah in every day, where everybody ideally is up for suhoor, right? So it's like 5 more minutes of being up, or waking up, making wudu, going and eating, and then 5 minutes before, already we shouldn't be eating well into the time, or right before the time, we should not be chugging water and it's 30 seconds and Fajr's ending. Ideally 5 minutes at least, we should stop eating. And in those 5 minutes, knock out 2 rak'ahs. It's easy. It's a time dua is accepted, your istighfar is accepted, inshallah, and you'll feel a huge difference in your day. A huge difference in your day praying Salatul Tahajjud. So it should be prioritized to try to do. And if we can do more than 2, someone on a weekend can get up and do 20 minutes of tahajjud, 30 minutes of tahajjud, you'll see a lot of benefit. The goal is to continue outside of the month of Ramadan, right? Outside of the month of Ramadan. The fourth part is extra other dhikr someone wants to do, right? So Quran is the highest form in the month of Ramadan, ideally preferred to recite as much as possible. But, you're walking around, you just try to have a portion of istighfar and a portion of salawat that we do in the month of Ramadan. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. Use every moment and try to take advantage of every moment, right? And I mean that in a balanced way, right? Again, if someone is like trying to talk to you and have a conversation, you don't just be like, I'm just focused on my dhikr. You have to have good character and good adab with somebody. However, if someone is getting like excessive, unnecessary conversations, you find your way to nightly excuse yourself and go and do some dhikr, because it's going to be much more beneficial in the month of Ramadan, right? And then we should also have a charity goal for this month, right? We give a portion of charity every day or every week, but try to get as many benefits as possible, right? A portion of all good, inshallah, will be accessible in this month, and so we want to try to attain that. Alhamdulillah. Great. Any questions on what we mentioned thus far? Questions? Nothing? Okay, so then we'll get into the Bismillah. Yeah, we'll get into media a little bit, and then we'll wrap up with the fiqh. So highly advise. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but if I did, I'll mention it again. That in the month of Ramadan, fasting is about a lot more than food and water. A lot more, right? So we mentioned last time there's the fasting of the eye. Does anybody remember what the fasting of the eye is? Anybody remember? Fasting of the eye. Yes.
Not looking at like haram things, lowering your gaze.
Excellent. Yep. Not looking at haram and lowering your gaze is like the most essential part of it. And then there's a higher degree of that. So it's like at the most essential, it's not looking at haram and lowering your gaze. At the higher degrees, it's not looking down on people, right? The eyes weren't created to look down on people. They were not created to be judgmental. At the higher degrees, it's not looking at something that pulls you towards the dunya, right? But these are higher degrees. They're not fard things, but you'll see the spiritual effect on your heart, right? And then at similarly, not looking at things that will waste our time. So someone could conceivably be not seeing most of the time. I think like probably 80% of the time, a lot of what we see on social media does have haram intertwined with it, because it's bound that the eye will catch something that's impermissible. However, if that's not the case, the eye was not created to just look at a device and scroll. Allah created the eye to look at the heavens. And so all of us now, we go like this instead of going like this, and it has a big impact on the heart, right? It has a big, big impact on the heart. We're supposed to be thinking about what's our purpose here, what is all this other amazing creation that Allah created, and contemplating Allah's creation. We don't end up doing that. We instead contemplate if we're going to get a few likes, or someone's going to share our post or whatever else it is. So what we want to do in the month of Ramadan is limit the time wasting that the eye engages in. If we can, the ideal goal is to shut off forms of media that we feel like are wasting our time. So highly advise shutting down our Netflix accounts, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney Plus. What else is there? I don't know anymore. Yeah, Prime, Amazon Prime Video. Shutting those down. It's highly advised shutting those down. And whatever premiere is coming, a new season is coming, all of it will be accessible after the month of Ramadan. And who knows, maybe you will have no desire to really watch it. Right? You don't know. But at minimum that, because TV is there's a lot of, it's very difficult to find a show that's like completely permissible to watch. You're going to have components of impermissibility in every single show, right? It's just to have a show where we expect everybody to dress modestly, already that's not going to exist. But if that does exist, okay, to have everybody speak about beneficial topics and to not curse and so on, I mean, to no violence. I mean, you're just not going to, you can watch like the G-rated Arthur or something if you really want, back from what we did back in the day. But if that interests you, right? But for most people, it's not going to interest them. And at some point, you'll move on to a different show. So if that's the case in Ramadan, try to limit it. You don't want, these are nights when the angels are literally going through the earth, searching for homes that are worshiping. If the angel comes in your house and sees, Netflix on, I mean, this is a reality. Like the angel's not going to really like that, right? They probably just go to someone else's house, right? And so you really don't, and try to actively think, like, if this were to happen and this is what I would be doing, like, would I not feel, somewhat weird about that, right? And so that would be the first thing with television. The second is with social media apps. Everybody has their own level of, what's the right word? I mean, addiction is the word, actually. So everybody has their own levels of addiction, frankly, with social media. We know now, studies have shown releases dopamine. It's truly, that's created. For anybody here who works at a social media company, you know exactly how the product is designed to create addiction tendencies, and that really, really makes sure the human being is always trying to check. Try to delete. The first goal would be to try to delete. I highly advise deactivate, right? If you can deactivate Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Discord, I don't know what I'm missing, but a few of the others, try to do so, right? At least four or five of those. If you can't delete, if you're like, no, like this is so important to me, your nafs will try to tell you, no, but the Islamic quotes, you see the Islamic quotes on Instagram. I mean, they come up and they'll tell you, be like, but the Islamic videos on TikTok, you see those. I mean, it'll tell you for that one video out of every 100. It'll tell you that. Be like, oh, but the cute cat videos, like that's nice. You want to contemplate, don't you want to think about animals? And so the nafs will try to come at you with all sorts of ways, right? And, oh, it's Facebook Live and all of these types of things. And what if there's a lecture going on? Like, that's the trick. I guarantee you won't miss out on anything. You won't miss out on anything because you'll be spending time with Allah. You'll be spending time with His book. You'll be spending time in trying to improve ourselves. And you'll be spending time actually feeling better, right? Because when you detach from these things a little bit and focus on remembrance, you start to feel a lot better as a human being. Like it actively, things start to change, right? So at minimum, at the goal I would advise is to try to deactivate, right? And don't let the nafs come at us with any level of saying, no, there's like an Islamic benefit to these things. Yes, there can be, but the primary Islamic benefit lies outside of those things, 100%, in the Quran and in the books, right, that have been written, and podcasts and so on are also good forms. If someone is not able to, they just really gotta have it, gotta have their fix, then acknowledge it as an addiction and work on it, right, in the month of Ramadan. Actively just say, you know what, I'm reliant, can't. It's too much. I love the little red dots. I love scrolling. I love pressing it's designed to be like a gambling machine, like a slot machine. You go down and it scrolls, and then you see the notifications pop up. Like all of these things are designed to impact the human mind. So you say, okay, no, I'm going to reduce the amount. I'm going to try to say on certain days I will go on it, on certain days I won't, or I will give myself 10 minutes a day or 20 minutes a day or whatever, but try to reduce that and see the time that comes back. Most of the time in the month of Ramadan, we feel like we don't have time to do to follow up on our goals, right, to accomplish our goals. Sometimes that's the case. Most of the time, though, it's because we don't create the time. The time is there. Everybody has, so if there's other people 24 hours in the day that are able to do things, it means it's possible. But most of the time, in the extra moments we have, it adds up, and we spend them in, things that are not usually as beneficial. So we try to limit those things, right? And then if we can, then in the last 10, try to get rid of it. That would be advice. If you still can't do it in the last 10, at least the last 5. The last 5, okay, at least the last 3. You don't want like the last few nights of Ramadan to come, and we're just like caught up in these things. Ideally, you will find a big benefit. I remember that it was 2013. Someone I know decided, you know what, for the month of Ramadan, I'm just going to give up Facebook. And then it was like, oh, this is great. Like it lasted 30 days. Oh, let me try it for 40 days. And then it was like, great. Let me try for the whole summer. At the time, the month of Ramadan was in the summer. And then great. And then it's like never got back on Facebook again. Like it just wasn't, this was back when Facebook was like, people actually were on Facebook. Now nobody's really on it. But like there was some active impact, right? Like it was like, oh, used to be super reliant on this, had all these, these connections and so on, but decided that maybe I'll try to take a break, and the heart really liked it, right? So you give yourself some room to subvert the dominant paradigm. Like the dominant paradigm says you have to do all of these things everybody else in society does in order to just function. It's like, well, how will I connect with my cousins in Pakistan? There's a lot of ways to connect with cousins in Pakistan. Facebook doesn't have to be the only way. There's other ways to do it. But the dominant paradigm says that you have to do certain things. Say, no. As a Muslim, we're not followers. We're supposed to ideally be leaders, right? Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You were sent as the best people ever sent forth to humanity. That's the ummah. The ummah is the best people ever sent forth to humanity. What defines whether they were the best people are those who encourage and enjoin goodness and guide away from badness. That is the quality that defines the best people. The ummah today, globally, we struggle with this. When we struggle with this globally, we start to see the types of things that happen with the ummah. The ummah has lost dignity and has lost respect globally because we just follow what everybody else does, right? We follow the Western standards, Western technology, everything we just kind of follow. Versus the Muslims used to be, believe it or not long ago, 500, 300 years ago, everybody followed the Muslims. The Muslims were the ones inventing things. The Muslims were the ones who discovered coffee. The Muslims were the ones who discovered soap. The Muslims are the ones, believe it or not, I mean, you could probably believe it. These people didn't clean themselves properly. They still don't really. So the Muslims were the ones who, and they came up with these ideas and these innovations, and then people, they adopted them, right? But we weren't always following. We've now gotten into this culture where we just like, new thing coming in the people who we look up to, it's basically, there's usually not always much moral value to what they're doing. There's goodness in what they're doing, but it's not really much moral value. So we don't want to be people who are constantly following, right? We want to ideally be people who fit this trait mentioned in the Quran, and this is a goal to focus on in Ramadan, is in addition to reciting, in addition to studying, in addition to praying, try to adopt the meanings of this book in our life, right? That there's a whole ayah that says, oh, you were the best people ever sent forth to humanity. Like, what does that even mean? I mean, that ayah in and of itself is so amazing, right? It could solve so many self-esteem issues that we might have in ummah as a community, right? Where we feel like less than other people, right? But it takes reflection, and it takes using these months or these times that Allah has given us to try to benefit as much as possible, right? So that would be the thing on media, is to try to limit it, as much as we can, ideally completely, and if we can't do it completely, then for a portion of the month. Great. So now we'll just finish off. We started a little late, so we're going to go for like 15 more minutes, inshallah. We're going to finish off with the fiqh of fasting. Does anybody have questions on what we just mentioned? Questions? Nothing? Okay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get to the fiqh of fasting. Okay, so the first thing with regards to the fiqh, first is that the month in and of itself, I think as everybody generally knows, is established by the sighting of the moon. The moon will people will go out, at least in this area, to look for the moon on Friday night. If it's sighted, the first day of fasting will be Saturday, inshallah. If it is not sighted, the first day, then you'll go out. Obviously, the 30 days of Sha'ban will be completed. The first day of fasting will be Sunday. Some people may follow the calculation method, which is saying that the first night will be Friday and the first day will be Saturday. Up to you which one you would prefer to follow. The traditional opinion on it, just so everybody is generally aware, is the moon sighting. Local moon sighting is the one with the strongest evidence from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, but it's not. Don't debate with people. Don't start the month of Ramadan moon fighting and getting in arguments. Do whatever makes the most sense to you, but try to look into it a little bit to try to make sure you're doing something that's in alignment with the Sunnah. So then we get into the fiqh of the rest of the month of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, it's not very complicated. Generally fairly straightforward. You want to have an intention for the fast, right? You want to intend to actually fast the fast of Ramadan, right? The required fast of Ramadan, versus, let's say, intending to fast a makeup fast or something like that. You actively intend something. And this does not have to be something you like. You don't have to articulate it. It's good to, but you can think it, you can intend it in your heart, but that intention is important. And then we get into what is the requirement of fasting. So starting with suhoor. Suhoor is not a fard in the month of Ramadan, but it is an important sunnah to follow in the month, right? So we don't want to miss out on the morning meal. The Prophet ﷺ told us there's blessing in this meal, and it's a blessed time, right? So if someone is in that mentality where they're just like, I'm just going to eat a lot at night and then go to sleep, and then in the last 5 minutes of Fajr, wake up real quick and pray 2 rak'ah, then go back to sleep, like try not to have that mentality in this month. We want to try to be awake at suhoor. We don't have to have long conversations or anything, but try to be awake to eat and to pray a little extra and then to start the fast. It is not advised to eat up until the exact time. At least a few minutes before we want to stop eating, right? Because your clock technically, it could, let's say Fajr is at 5:47 or something, and your clock could say it's 5:46. Something could be off and Fajr has already entered. And at that point, if you're still eating by fiqh, the fast would not be valid, right? So you want to give yourself a little bit of room here to stop eating a few minutes before Fajr and obviously drinking water and so on. The iftar enters not at the time when our iPhones tell us that it's sunset. That's really, really important to note. That is not the sunset. That is the true sunset for Salat al-Maghrib. If anybody ever goes on and drives along like the 80, and you'll be next to the water right near like between Berkeley and Richmond, you'll see if you go in at that time, let's say today was 7:30, the phone says sun is setting. The sun hasn't actually set. There's still about 15% of the sun that you can see on the horizon past the ocean, right? They do it based on what's called astronomical sunset. The actual sunset is 3 minutes past the time that they say. So most masjids, if they have a little calendar, they'll add it to that. But most of us, we're not using those calendars. We're using our phones and whatnot. So just make sure you give yourself 3 minutes minimum from the time the sun is setting. Otherwise, again, the sunset will not have entered, and right before the fast, we will, have done it, have jumped the gun and have done it too early. Doesn't mean you wait for like 20 minutes also, right? That's not something we should do. But at least 3 to 5 minutes, right? Some of the scholars, Imam Dawood, for example, usually recommends 5 minutes. I've heard him say the 3 minutes at minimum is what is recommended past what the sunset. And at the time of iftar, right before iftar, try to be in a state of dua, right? Try to be in a state of dua. This is a time when dua is accepted, inshallah. So this is not a time to, if someone is preparing food, if you can, ideally, just have whatever you've already prepared and go and sit down and at least make dua for 2-3 minutes and then get back up and finish preparing whatever else. But don't let this time pass and it's just kind of like conversations are going on and we're on our phone or whatever else it is, and then it's like, okay, great, it's time to break the fast. This is a very important time. If you just take advantage of the time before suhoor and the time before iftar for dua and prayer and a little bit of extra, that will be sufficient for an excellent Ramadan, inshallah. Like these are secret times. Take advantage. The return on investment on these times is really, really high, right? So we really want to take advantage of these times for istighfar and for dua, inshallah. So then we get into the things that invalidate the fast. The only thing that will completely, there's 2 types of invalidation of the fast, and we're going through fiqh according to the Hanafi school. The first is something that is you break the fast and it requires 60 days of continuous fasting, what's called kafara, right? This would be if somebody intentionally eats, right? Intentionally drinks something, right? Or anything, right? Like intentionally, it could be raining and they're intentionally drinking the rainwater and whatnot. That would be the case. I don't think anybody does that. Or intentionally has relations. And so in this case, relations are applying to intentionally has sexual intercourse in the month during the daytime. That completely breaks the fast and requires makeup of the fast and 60 days kafara and expiation. Then there's a type of fast a type of breaking which could be done where you don't have to do the 60 days and instead you just have to make up that fast. So that would be anything entering your cavities, the different entry points into the body, right? Other than like eye drops, for most of the other things, anything that enters, even and this is like as small as like someone is like biting their nails and they're getting stuff inside of them, like that actually breaks the fast, but it does not require 60 days of expiation. It's just you have to make up that fast, right? And so that would be anything entering. It would be accidentally swallowing water while making wudu or doing ghusl invalidates the fast. So the accidental swallowing of the water would invalidate the fast. This is, and we don't have to get into this too much, but there's a big difference between forgetting and you're fasting and you do an accident. What I mean by that is like you're making wudu and you're like, yeah, I know I'm fasting, but let me just really go deep and like get it. And then next thing you know, you swallow water. Fast is broken. That's really different than like you wake up in the morning and you go to the fridge and you go to get water because it's your routine. And then you're like, oh, I forgot I was fasting today. That actually doesn't break the fast, right? And it's completely done out of forgetfulness versus in the first situation, and you were aware of yourself as fasting and you do it. So wudu should be done. You still do full wudu, but during ghusl, definitely be careful about the gargling to do too deep in this case. So that would be the intentional, or that would require a makeup day. The third is something that somebody, I think there's, in the Hanafi school at least, eardrops and I believe inhalers as well are not okay, but that might be a difference of opinion in other schools, so it's worth checking on. And then if somebody has and I'm getting into the fiqh, I apologize if we have obviously men and women completely present here. But if someone has a wet dream, that does not break the fast if it's completely out of your control. If somebody has it outside, right, ejaculation outside, like while awake, that breaks the fast, right? If it's done with desire, it breaks the fast. So you have to make up that fast. But unlike when someone has full sexual relations, it does not require 60 days of kafara. It requires making up that day, right? It requires making up that day. So those are basically the 4 things that require that make the fast invalid, but they require making up. And then there's the first 3 categories, which are like you just brazenly break the rules, and that actually requires 60 days. And this would also apply if somebody wakes up. I've heard this happen before, where someone will wake up and they'll miss suhoor, and they'll be like, oh, I missed suhoor, I don't have to fast today, it's going to be too difficult for me. That is actively saying I'm not going to, I'm eating something when I'm supposed to not be eating. That requires making up of the fast and 60 days straight fasting. It's really, really serious. It's not a joke. And I actually know many families that have this mistaken notion that like, oh yeah, if you don't wake up, you don't have to fast because you're not going to have energy and so on. In Ramadan, the fasting is from the time Fajr enters to the time Maghrib comes in, regardless of if someone had a meal or not, right? But obviously the sunnah is to eat a meal. And it's fine in most of the schools, like eye drops are fine. If someone's getting a shot and whatnot, it's fine. And those types of things are fine. And then lastly, with regards to, or actually 2 more things, sickness and travel. With regards to sickness, it can't just be like a light sickness. It has to be, you have to actually be sick and have the opinion of a doctor that it would not be okay to fast. So if someone's feeling kind of a light headache and I could probably do it, you start the day fasting. And then if you're not able to continue, you don't continue anymore because it's getting too unbearable. But you don't start the day with a light sickness, not fasting. But if a doctor, and ideally you get the opinion from someone who's Muslim, who understands the seriousness of Ramadan, says, hey, don't fast, then don't fast, right? Then it would actually be wrong to fast. And then if someone has health conditions, which it makes it dangerous for their body to fast, serious diabetes being one of them, and the doctor says, do not fast, then you can't fast. It's a haram. You would be getting sin just for fasting because your health is more important and your life is more important than the worship in this case. So Islam is very, very flexible with these things. It just requires checking up and knowing these things. And then lastly, with travel, in the Hanafi school at least, the travel you have to have set out before Fajr for you to not fast that day. And so the way to think about it is that if you have a flight, let's say at 2-3 p.m., right? So in traveling, the ruling is you don't have to fast if you don't want to, right? It's up to you. Many people will choose to do it. Others are like, it's too difficult, not going to do it. If your flight is like at 2-3 p.m., you start the day fasting, right? And then at that point, you finish the fast. You'll finish the fast as well, right? But let's say your flight is, a 2-day flight. When the next day kind of begins, you don't have to fast, and it might be too difficult because it's really difficult to get access to food and whatnot. But you start the day fasting, and there's various reasons to that. Who knows if the flight will get delayed, if you'll even make it to that flight, whatever else it is, right? So you start the day fasting. If someone has set out for their journey, meaning let's say you're in Oakland, you've left Oakland city limits, and it's like 5 a.m., Fajr has not entered. You do not have to start the day fasting, right? You can say I'm on my journey, I'm traveling, flying somewhere, or going 50-ish miles or longer away, and you don't have to fast if you choose not to. But that's it just kind of depends. The advised thing is try to fast if you can, but don't make it difficult on yourself, right? Do not make it difficult on ourselves, alhamdulillah. So with that, we'll go ahead and basically wrap up. I want to see if there's any questions. Yes.
So you gotta make up that fasting instead for traveling.
Yeah. So any fasts that are missed for traveling, for sickness, that are made up. Or if someone is nursing and says is not able to fast, they would make up the fast as well. Yeah. Yes.
So if you travel in the middle of the day, which sunset do you use to actually break your fast? From where you left or where you arrived?
The sunset at where you are at that time is one opinion, is the opinion I tend to follow. So let's say that you're going here to the East Coast, right? You start the day here. Ideally your prayers and everything else, your religious clock is now ticking based on the location you're at, right? So if it's like 5 p.m. here and you go and then like pretty quickly now, right? Maghrib enters, you have to pray, you have to break your fast and you have to pray Maghrib, right? At that point. And then if somebody's, combining, they would combine at that point. There are opinions that would say you can choose to follow where you're leaving from, or but it also applies in the other direction. So when you're coming back from New York and you're fasting, then it's going to be a little bit of a longer day, and so you can't pick and choose. Like, I'll follow one this time and the other next time. Yeah, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the same would apply for the prayers when traveling. Yeah. It's yes. Question.
What's the ruling on vomiting during fasting? Do you eat very fast?
Yep. Great question. So the question was the ruling on vomiting, and I'm right here. So if you vomit a mouthful or more, your fast would be broken. If it's a very, very slight amount that comes up, you would be fine. But it does not require an expiation. So it doesn't require the 60 days. It's just that fast is now broken and you have to make up the fast. One thing to note and so by the way, the criteria of a mouthful is that your mouth cannot hold the vomit without strain, just in case that we're going to clarify what a mouthful is. The one thing to note about making up and when the fast is broken and making up. So if you break your fast, like let's say you vomit, God forbid, or something else happens, it doesn't mean that it's that you're free, right? What's the word? Does anybody here speak Urdu? What's the word for chutti in English? Like you're free from the obligation. And it doesn't mean that. It means that you actually you still have to fast. You broke it, so you have to finish the fast and required to make it up. So it's a little bit on the tougher side. But you can't just be like, 3 p.m. I'm just gonna go and eat a burger now. My fast is broken anyways. No. The month of Ramadan is still in. Fast is required to be made up. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, maybe you covered this earlier, but during the day or prior to Iftar, if you're going to go to Tarawih and be up late at night, is there any recommended time that you can maybe take a nap or something like that?
Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. So it's during the day, you're tired, any recommended time to take a nap? It's hard with most jobs, but it's possible on the weekends. The recommended time is post Dhuhr is a good time to take a nap, or even before Dhuhr. So let's say someone is awake from the morning time, you want to take a nap from 12 to 2, and then wake up before Dhuhr and wake up at Dhuhr and pray. But usually that's hard. If you can sneak in a nap, in your lunchtime, an hour or so, it's good. If you can't do that, someone could also sleep when they come home from work to get some extra sleep in. But the recommended time would usually be that afternoon, noon, slightly before noon or right after noon time. And then otherwise, finding pockets throughout to catch up. But it is actually a very good thing to take some extra naps, like power nap or 2 throughout the day, to have some himma at night. It's actually a very, very good thing. And while you're fasting and you're sleeping, you're still rewarded. It's not like your reward is being reduced, as long as we're not missing prayers and whatnot, right? And not oversleeping 20 hours or something, right? But but fasting and sleeping is considered a good, it's considered fine, and it's actually really good to get a nap in to try to have some extra himma, because it's really difficult to be going all day and then standing, for 20 rakahs or how many ever at night. Yeah. Yes, question.
I find it difficult when I'm menstruating and I can't fast or pray and still feel the Ramadan spirit in essence. Are there recommendations on what I should be doing with my days still?
Yep, great question. So the question is, if someone is on their cycle, they're menstruating, how do we still kind of keep the spiritual flow going of the month of Ramadan? So a couple of tips here, and then sisters also, please feel free to share tips that you all might have. One is to still keep the times of the prayer as sacred times. So to just sit and do dhikr instead. So you're allowed to do dhikr. You're allowed to make dua. You sit on the prayer mat, right? There's a lot that someone can do to try to have a portion there, right? So if you can do 4 or 5 times a day of specific dhikr that you want to do at that time, and then make dua, that would be very, very good. The second is to use those times, like reading the books of knowledge and learning knowledge is very, very virtuous, right? So again, it could be done during the prayer times. It could be done anytime outside. But fasting is supposed to be a goal. The goal is to eventually purify ourselves, right? Purify our heart. There's other routes to purify the heart as well. Seeking knowledge is one of the most virtuous ones to do so. So go and say, okay, I'm not able to fast today, but I'm going to try to listen to 30, 40 minutes of a beneficial lecture, podcast or something. Or I'm going to try to read the English Quran or the tafsir or a commentary, something like that. So those three, dhikr, dua, and seeking knowledge would be really, really advisable. And then also still taking advantage of the sacred time. So like, let's say everybody else is about to have iftar, that time, 10, 15 minutes before, it's still virtuous, regardless of if someone is fasting or not. Very, very virtuous time for dua, right? So still taking advantage of that. The nighttime, very virtuous time for extra ibadah, right? Ibadah can take the form of someone is not able to pray Isha or Taraweeh, just, okay, say I'm going to try to do 100 istighfar on a tasbih, or I'm going to try to do 100 la ilaha illallah, and set goals for yourself. Just have that set out kind of in advance of, okay, the week that I'm not able to fast, I'm going to have these goals for myself, right? And then take it easy as well, to rest. But I would try that out. Does anybody else have any other advice for that? Does that answer the question? Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I have, like, kind of a follow-up to
Yeah.
that. The first thing was, if you have like a goal that you've set to do a khatam, like, is it okay to continue to read your juz even while you're on the cycle?
Great question. So the question was, if someone has a goal that they've set to do their khatam, can they read their juz on their cycle? In the Hanafi school, no, you cannot. You would have to take a break from it. Yeah, to recite outside of to read, to touch, or to recite outside of something that's like a daily wird, like a daily practice someone does. So let's say you have a daily practice of Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu birabbin nas in the morning and the evening, like that would be considered fine. But to go outside of the daily practice and to try to enter to recite isn't okay on the cycle. I don't know the rulings of any of the other schools. I don't know, Omar, if you know when someone is on their cycle, if there's rulings of still being able to recite Quran.
I personally don't know, but I've been told, I think it's just a question of the web also that, and that's probably that I was told that
It was okay in the Maliki school.
I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's worth asking around for any of the other madhabs. Yeah. Yes. You can read. Malikis can read. So if anybody wants to take the Maliki Ruksa, should talk. Yeah.
And then the other thing was, you mentioned how, like, if someone vomits, like, they can't just start eating. Like, if their fast breaks, they can't just have burger or something. You said something like that, right?
Yeah. If someone breaks their fast, like so in this case, like let's say this would apply to most of the situation. Like let's say you're making wudu and you swallow water, fast is broken. You still have to keep the fast and make up the fast, right? So it would be in those instances, yeah.
So it doesn't apply, like, if you get your cycle, you can eat, right? Like,
Oh, okay, yeah. If you're
still try to eat less, or?
right, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So if you are, let's say, you're on your cycle and then you're now, it ends in the middle of the day, you have to start fasting at that point. But if on the inverse side, I believe you don't have to finish the fast. Actually, yeah, you don't have to finish the fast on the inverse side. So if you're fasting and your cycle enters, you don't have to finish the fast. That's like, because you're now in a state where the fast is completely not obligatory on you, right? You're not supposed to be fasting. So let's say it's like 2 p.m. and someone's fasting and then your cycle enters, you don't have to fast at that point, right? At all. But if it's 2 p.m. and you weren't fasting and your cycle finishes, now you have to start fasting and have to make up the day as well. Yeah. So like, ideally it's like, post Maghrib or something. But yeah, yes, question.
Just growing up, I was told that your cycle ended before the hoods, like you can fast it, and if it didn't, like it was in past the hood, like that day would come. Is that like not true? Considering what you're saying.
Yeah, if it ended before the hurt, let me check on that. Yeah.
Before fasting, would you have to like take a shower and do like a whole, like proper wudu?
Right.
Fast, or that would be so much?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Let me look into that like right after the class and then follow up with you, inshallah. Yeah, because I don't know the answer. Does anybody know the answer to that off the top of their head in terms of timing?
I also heard that growing up, but I don't know if it's true.
Okay, got it. I mean, there's likely proof for it. I just need to, let me look that up and then we'll follow up. Yeah. Any other questions and then we'll end. Sorry. Yes. Go ahead.
So let's say, hypothetically, a person were to intentionally break their fast twice. They have to spend like 120 days fasting.
Yep. Good question. I believe the kafara is done. One time for those situations. But let me also follow up on that, inshallah. What's safer to do is to do the 60 days and then to also feed 60 people. So there's so if someone is unable, let's say someone is like later in their life and they're unable to do 60 days straight, at least feed, or they're just like, hey, I'm not going to do this. It's very difficult. At least feed the 60 people. That's the second option. You feed 60 meals. But the preference is to do the 60 days. And then you would make up, but you have to make up those two and then do the 60 days continuously. But I'll follow up on if it's done twice or not. I'm not sure, actually. Yeah, question.
I'm not sure like how many days of fasting that I need to make up, especially after hearing some of these rules. So how do you best estimate how much you need to make up for the regular fasting plus the expiation? Like if you just don't.
Yeah, good question. The question was, so if we have to estimate the number of days to make up for fasting and then also for expiation, how do you determine it? So it's a good question. You want to overestimate and then start with that, right? So like if you have a sense, let's say that hey, when I was this old, I probably missed like 2 weeks, right? You think it might be a little less, but just go with the 2 weeks, right? But you know that you fasted the other 2 weeks. So you start there and then kind of keep, you create a little log on a spreadsheet, say this is what year it was and what I think the estimate was. And then you add a little bit, 10% or something to make sure you go over that. And then essentially the same for expiation. But you're not going to be able to do like expiation for all those instances. So in that case, you just feed a lot of people. Yeah.
And
so
by feeding people
60, so you can do like, for example, you could literally feed 60 meals to people around. You just have to make sure you count that. Or you could go online and you can find like, there's like actually kafara payments you can make online. So you can go to like Islamic Relief and you can say kafara for this. And then I believe that there's one option you can pick, 60 people, 60 meals in Pakistan or Yemen or wherever else it is. And then overseas, and you can feed them that. And so in that case, you would want to do that for the various Ramadans in which it took place. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Cool. Well, actually, it's not that related, but like I have the same sort of question with Salah. So it's like the same sort of idea, like you just kind of estimate for each year how many you might have missed.
Yep. For Salat, for anybody who has to make up Salat, what you do is you calculate the date at which Salah became obligatory on you, right? So the date of puberty. And then you estimate how many years, if someone is like, I didn't pray for 6 years straight, it just didn't happen, right? Or like it happened only when your mom told you, but otherwise it didn't happen, right? Let's just say that's the case. Then you overestimate, say I have to pray all 5 of those. I know somebody who said they always prayed Isha and Maghrib, but they were really loose with the other ones. So they know at least they have to pray Fajr, Dhuhr, and Asr for 6 years. But Maghrib and Isha, they're like 100% sure that they prayed all of them because they prayed them as a family or something like that. So you would basically do that, and you would overestimate as well in this case. So if you're like unsure, I was 15 and I didn't pray till I was 21, then you would overestimate slightly. So you'd be like, okay, like 6 years roughly that you do. And you might, of course, everybody prayed a few prayers in between there, hopefully. But you just, inshallah, anything you do extra, you'll get extra reward as a sunnah prayer, right? Anything that you do, but anything you do below, that's where the problem comes in. Yeah. So prayers have to be made up as prayers. So you have to make them up like as niyyah of a Fajr, the niyyah of a Dhuhr, the niyyah of an Asr, the niyyah of a Maghrib, the niyyah of an Isha. but you don't have to do it in order. You can just do a Fajr here, Dhuhr here, Maghrib here, and you just keep a track. I would just put it on a spreadsheet, keep a log, and just work through it, right? Yeah.
And what you said earlier about praying Tarawih, this would be, I think it was for 1 month up, but you have to pray these like making prayers before.
So the in our time, I would highly advise, it's in the Shafi school and the Maliki school at least, that makeup prayers take precedence over Taraweeh, over any Sunnah prayers. In the Hanafi school, they say do both, which is really difficult to do, right? So the advice I would have is to prioritize the makeups. If you know you have a lot of Fajrs, take the Shafi ruling on making a niyyah for a Fajr behind the Imam when they're praying Taraweeh. These are like very flexible things that most people will be like, maybe don't want to do that. I'm just saying the more flexible options because I know in our time that people need flexibility, right? To just kind of get in this rhythm of making things up. But these are not like the super strict opinions in all these areas. And then what you would do is you would also have a time where you would make up prayers separately. So like, let's say that you're saying, okay, you did all your Fajrs. At that point, you can't do like an Isha with the Taraweeh. That wouldn't work. So I would advise, okay, you do a little bit of Taraweeh and then go home and do a bunch of makeups, right? Just get it in. But try to get to 20 rakahs of makeups in that case, right? And then instead of any tahajjud, you do a makeup prayer at that time. Instead of any extra, most of the extra sunnahs, you do a makeup prayer at that time. You just make up until you get in the rhythm of doing it. And then ideally, it might take 3-4 years, but you'll have made all of them up, inshallah. Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
You mentioned Taraweeh is not optional for me.
Yeah, what I mentioned, so it's an emphasized sunnah. So sunnah mu'akkada means that it's highly emphasized to do. So it's what I meant by not optional is it's not the type of thing that like is very common in our culture today where it's like, will be, oh, should I go to Taraweeh or should I not? And someone's like, it's just optional, don't do it. That's not, you don't want to look at it like that. It's emphasized sunnah, meaning 1 or 2 days of someone not doing it is fine, but consistently leaving Taraweeh just out of laziness is considered sinful, right? Like just because it is, we know the Messenger ﷺ did this in the month of Ramadan, but you do not have to do it in the masjid, right? The preference would be pray Isha in the masjid. That is essential for men to do in month Ramadan and outside of Ramadan as well, ideally. No. Sorry, like it's really good spiritually to do. Yeah, not essential. So not mandatory. Also an emphasized sunnah to try to pray Isha in the masjid. But Taraweeh, if you're not able to pray in the masjid, pray at home, right? Like in COVID, everybody's praying at home. It's fine. Pray on your own, pray in Jama'ah, but just pray. If you can't do the long Taraweeh, the full Quran, that is like not required at all, right? So if you just want to get in the 20 rak'ah and do the short surahs, there's many parts of the Muslim world, they do that in the masjids. They don't do the full Quran in the masjids. You just got to get in, do some portion of night prayer, ideally, right? But the rulings will vary on whether it's emphasized or not and whether it's definitely not required, but it's good to do. Yeah. So I would recommend makeup prayers, prioritize, do them at home, have a portion to at least attend Isha and a few rak'ah in the masjid, and then go and do a bunch of makeups. If you feel like you're not gonna be able to do it at home, just go in the corner of the masjid and do that, if you can. Yeah. Okay, we're well over time. Yes, last question.
Sorry, this is I know you kind of mentioned it.
Yeah.
But like, let's say you just make the intention that Tyler has the makeup for pleasure prayers, and then you just come to Tyler every day, and then you basically, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
So
fine.
what you have to do there is you have to make the intention of every prayer. You are not intending Salat al-Taraweeh. You are intending Salat al-Fajr. And as long as you are aware of that and you consciously make that intention in the Shafi school, it is permissible to do. Yeah. But again, it's like the type of thing that, yeah, I mean, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. It's not like the strictest opinion. Yeah. Yes.
This isn't a question, but there are apps that help you track how many prayers you have to make up, and then you can also just like add or minus like once you complete them, there's one more that you miss.
Great idea. Yeah.
I don't know
So
what they're called, but-
yeah. So there's like prayer tracking apps and spreadsheets and whatnot that exist that have already been created since someone knew that a lot of us missed our prayers, so they created the app. There's also Quran memorization apps. Like there's a ton of good apps out there to help facilitate some of these things. So I would advise looking into them. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so if anybody has we'll do one last question, and then we'll go ahead and end. Brother Omar, forgive me. I know we can't finish. I'm so sorry. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just giving a shout out to an app. Salah Fala is one I use. It's a very good prayer tracker, and it tries to get you to build good habits over time.
Salah Fala. Okay, good app. Alhamdulillah. Okay, alhamdulillah. So we'll go ahead, inshallah. If anybody has other questions, and I'll check on that, that we will follow up afterwards. So in Ramadan, we are pausing the Wednesday class. Okay, so we were not able to figure out a way to do it with iftar, new carpet. The Amir says no iftar on the new carpet. And doing it outside, if let's say weather wasn't good, it would have been difficult to manage iftar outside. So we will not be doing a class in Ramadan. However, there will be other classes the masjid is offering in the month of Ramadan that will not be like coinciding with iftar. So it might be a class at like 5 o'clock or 6. And then every night, inshallah, after 8 rak'ah, there will be a reminder, 5-10 minute reminder by somebody, inshallah, probably rotate out a few people. So that will be the case, inshallah. And then the masjid will be doing obviously Isha and then 20 rak'ah. And the details for that will go out by like Friday night on the masjid email list. And Isha will probably be at 9 p.m. to start with. And then obviously as it goes later, we'll increase it by 10 to 15 minutes, inshallah. Alhamdulillah. Cool. So if you guys know anybody who usually was coming to class, please just let them know that in Ramadan it's paused. But after the month of Ramadan, we continue, inshallah, finish out the book that we're in the topic that we're doing on practical spirituality. So we'll finish off the book. We have probably 8 chapters left. So about 7 to 8 more weeks, inshallah, we'll finish out the book. Alhamdulillah. Yes.
What is the title of the book?
The title of the book that we've been going through is called The Book of Assistance. The Book of Assistance, yeah. It's a really, really good book. Yes.
Who's the author?
Imam al-Haddad. Haddad. Imam al-Haddad is the author of the book, yeah. Alhamdulillah. Okay, alhamdulillah. Sorry for keeping everybody late. We'll go ahead and end with the dua. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallim. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu minadh dhalimin. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Fattah, Ya Mubin, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Ya Allah, we ask, Ya Allah, that you make this Ramadan full of blessings for us. Ya Allah, put barakah in this Ramadan for us. Make it full of forgiveness for us and our families and our community members and our loved ones, and make it full of nur and make it full of nearness to you, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Make it full of the ability to follow the sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, we ask you for all good, and we intend everything the Prophet Sallallahu intended, Ya Allah, to do in this month of Ramadan. We ask that you pour your sweet breezes upon us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, and allow us to draw nearer and nearer to you in this month. Ya Allah, allow us to recite abundant amounts of Quran and to pray extra and to do a bunch of dua and to make up prayers that we have missed, Ya Allah, and to be present in our fast, Ya Allah, and may allow us to achieve the fast of the elect and to achieve the fast of the elect and to achieve the fast, Ya Rabbil Alameen, Ya Allah, by means of which we stay away from all haram, Ya Allah, and that we only focus on you in this month of Ramadan, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We ask you for everything good the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked for, and we ask you for protection from everything evil that he asked protection from. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah. Okay, we'll go ahead and pray Isha.